Good morning, everybody that's already on today. I hope we had a few less connection issues than we may have had last time. So we are going to get started in just a few minutes. I wanted to do it just a little bit differently than we did last time. Last time when we set this up, we had a few people that weren't getting the video feed right away. So I just wanted to give everybody just a couple minutes to get on the call. So we will be starting the actual presentation about 9:05. So please bear with me until then. Thank you. All right, I'm seeing more and more people that are getting on, so kind of watching that viewership number tack up a little bit. So I know that we're getting people on. Hopefully, again, if you're having connection issues, please, I know some of us are frustrated with our computers already. We don't want to chuck them out the window, anything like that. We want to make sure we keep these things, even though they cause us much frustration, especially the last couple of days. I've been ready to throw mine out the window. But remember that all of this is going to be recorded, so if you join a little bit late or if you have an issue, we'll make sure that all of this information is available. We'll throw it up on YouTube. You can watch it later. Any of the questions that come in, you can go back and review those. So just to go through a little bit of what we've got on our agenda today, we do have a couple of presenters, which I'm very grateful to have with us. So Georgia Auch has joined us again from the Department of Workforce Services, and she'll be covering a little bit about the Power Participation Matrix. Some of you guys may have already seen that, and some of you may have not. But we wanted to make sure that this was just a perfect time, since we've just kind of finished our Power Surge, to be able to review that so that we can continue to help kind of grow those power numbers. We've already seen a lot of people be more successful with that program, and we just want to continue it. So I'd like to thank Georgia for being here. We also are going to continue with a little bit of our new paths review. Those of our workers that were able to attend that new paths conference have graciously offered to kind of share some of that knowledge that they picked up in that conference with all of us. So we've got a couple of people with that. I do know that Brandi Eliason from the Gillette office is already on the call with us, and Geri Zeimans has also offered to do that. So Geri, if you're listening to this, I did send you an email and a link so you can join the call, and hopefully you're able to find that by the time we get to you. So just kind of keeping that in mind. All right, and then I will finish off. We'll talk about a few of the changes that have come across our desks as far as some of the narratives and some of the other trainings that are coming up, and introduce our notices toolkit that has been forthcoming for some time. So I'll introduce that to you as well. All right, so that being said, I'm going to see if Georgia is still on the call. We'll turn the time over to her and let her get started. Again, I'd like to thank her for being here today.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me today, everyone. I know that we discussed the Power Participation Matrix briefly at the May conference, but today I'll be sharing a little more details with you, and I also have a little presentation. So let's see if I can pull up my PowerPoint slide, and we'll get started.
And while you're pulling up that up, Georgia, I'm just going to let you know too, if anybody has questions that are coming in, those will show up on the right-hand side, and I will kind of address those once we're done. So if you guys have questions along the way, just make sure you type those in. At the end of the presentation, I'll ask Georgia maybe to answer a few of those questions, and we'll see if there's anything else we can cover. Also, just kind of remember we're on a 30-second delay, so we will give a little extra time at the end of this to address those questions.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So at DWS, we're really excited. We've been talking a lot about our new Power Participation Matrix. We're really excited about it. It is our new assessment methodology that we use for work program strategies to ensure a structured, consistent delivery of services to our customers. And it has two primary goals. Our first goal is, of course, to better assess our participants at the beginning of the case life cycle, ensuring that we're providing meaningful and appropriate services that promote growth and progression towards employment and self-sufficiency. And our second goal is streamlining our case management practices. Like you, we are trying to reduce our administrative redundancies so that we can focus more on the client. And we do that by utilizing this tiered assessment so that, again, we can provide consistent program practices, reducing any unnecessary administrative work. Of the case life cycle, ensuring that we're providing meaningful and appropriate services that promote growth and progression towards employment and self-sufficiency. And in the POWER program, we do recognize that each participant has unique strengths and challenges in their journey to self-sufficiency. And we know that long-term success comes only when the participant is self-motivated and ready. So the Power Participation Matrix is really about meeting the participant at their level and then creating partnerships for employment. This allows us to apply appropriate individualized support services when and as needed. And again, this is accomplished using that tiered approach. So based on federal rules and guidelines, as well as our past program experience, we identified the four most common levels, as you can see here, of customer need, And we assign specific participation strategies to each of these levels that we know from experience are appropriate for that level and are most likely to promote long-term client growth and self-sufficiency. So what's really changed is how we assess the participants, and I'm showing you the new participant self-assessment form. The first assessment that we do with our participants helps us to determine if the participant is truly work ready. Again, we know from past experience that if a participant isn't work ready, insisting that they move into job search activities at the beginning of the case is not only ineffective, but it's also very self-defeating to both the participant and all of the workers involved. So this new assessment allows us to engage the client both at the beginning of the case assessment stage as well as in the service planning stages of the case, as well as continuing throughout the life cycle of the case. So the new assessment allows us then to create our service plans or IRPs in a different manner as well. Once we've identified the level of participation on the matrix scale, there we go, fun little slide. Once we've identified the level of participation on the matrix scale that the participant should be assigned to, we then choose specific IRP participation strategies that are associated with that level of participation so that we can create meaningful plans. All of the plans, no matter what level the participant is assigned to on the matrix scale, includes a focus on personal and family stability, financial education, personal improvement, time management, and of course, employability activities. Now, page 1 and 2 that I'm showing here are meant to engage the participant. The participant actually completes these 2 pages, assessing themselves and identifying what's important to them. Again, engaging them in the planning stages of the service plan. But there's much, much more. Pages 3 through 8 are for the case manager, and they use it as a discussion guide to further clarify the participant's self-assessment in order to identify exact services that are needed so that appropriate activities could be assigned to the individual. But it's really important to remember that this is a very personal assessment. It asks extremely detailed questions about the customer's life, about their health and mental health, if they're involved in counseling, what type of counseling, such as substance abuse or domestic violence. It asks about specific family circumstances, whether or not they're involved with child protection services or if their children's behaviors are preventing them from working. It asks about housing, financial and legal circumstances, and or convictions. And of course, we discuss employment history as well. So at the very beginning of the case life cycle, during this assessment, it's often very difficult for participants to share this level of personal information. So sometimes participants are hesitant to divulge their true situations, which often results in immediate requests for withdrawal or a failure to follow through. However, this assessment is absolutely crucial in understanding why the participant is unemployed or underemployed so that the appropriate service plan or IRP can be created to help that participant achieve long-term success. This diagram shows the streamlined case management approach of the matrix. As you can see, the first step is the assessment. 2 phases of that assessment is the client self-assessment and the case manager assessment. Once we have identified which level of the participation matrix scale that the participant should be assigned to, we then are able to consult the matrix resources and IRP templates and choose the most appropriate suggested participation strategies to be included in the IRP. Again, this process affords us a very streamlined but flexible approach to our case management and allows us to focus specifically on the individual needs of the participant instead of on the paperwork, and also provides that consistent, proven case management principles that we know help the participant to achieve that long-term success. This slide represents the flow of the assessment with one really exciting change. Ta-da! And that's the employability work experience. After determining whether or not the individual is work ready, we look at the factors that are preventing them, or the barriers that are preventing them from engaging in employment and self-sufficiency. And again, in the past, clients had one option, and that was they had to move into job search. And typically, when most of our customers come to us, they are not ready for job search. They're not work ready at all for whatever reason. And now, because we're able to use this, the new assessment to identify the work readiness or not, we're able to apply the employability work experience to address both employability and personal and family stabilization issues that we find are often contributing to those employment failures. So the employability work experience is a case manager supervised work experience that addresses personal and family stabilization issues and or employability concerns, utilizing special support services that guide the participant through those barriers and resolving those barriers to allow them to prepare for work search. I'm sorry, Kelly, I'm just reading your note here. Am I showing a redundant screen? Is that what you're telling me, Kelly?
Sorry, no, I think that was just a few people who were having some issues with an echo, but it has nothing to do with you, so you should be just fine.
Okay, thank you. So the important thing to remember about the personal and family stability, employability work experience is that it is time limited. It can only be used for a total of 4 weeks in a 12-month period. And really, it's impactful because we know that each participant has different needs, and this employability work experience can be applied in increments, such as 1 week or 2 weeks, or we can use all 4 weeks at one time. After the assessment, the case manager will decide if and how to apply the work experience. Some individuals may not even need it. Some may truly be work ready, and they are just in situational type poverty circumstances that really all they need is help with employability services. So during the employability work experience, however, the focus is really placed on ensuring the participant completes appropriate recommended steps or action to resolve those identified barriers. And then case managers, of course, monitor the participation hours to ensure that participation meets the federal guidelines. So again, not all clients need the employability work experience, but many do need time before job searching to address and resolve those important family issues such as safe or stable housing, appropriate child care and transportation, ensuring that once the self-sufficiency is achieved, it can be sustained. So after we ensure that those concerns are addressed, we then focus on the long-term plan, using the participation matrix as our guide to assign countable work activities, as we always do. And then just like in your cases, our cases fall into that normal cycle of assessment and compliance. So that part hasn't changed. It's just the assessment part and how we get to here that's really changed for our participants. So again, just to summarize, this is really, the participation matrix is really just a method of assessment that we're using to identify client work readiness status, and then to address individual employment barriers using that streamlined, very flexible administrative workflow for case management. So that's pretty much everything. If you have questions, I'd be happy to take those.
So perfect. If anybody has any questions, please just type them in. We'll make sure that each of them are addressed. And while we're kind of waiting for those in, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions, Georgia?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things is I noticed here, and you did a great job of sharing that power assessment form, which is really nice. Is that something that maybe we could share with our workers in a format that they could read just a little bit better, aside from your PowerPoint? Even if it's not the form itself, just kind of the things that you'd be looking at in order to put somebody in either job placement or training.
Absolutely, Kelly. Corinne and I actually have been working on some documentation to share with you guys, including a new brochure for the customers to help educate the customers a little bit on what power is, kind of more in layman terms. So one of the documents that I created has the complete 8 pages of the assessment, along with 3 or 4 examples of what a customer IRP would look like after the assessment. So absolutely, I'd be happy to share that with you.
I think that's perfect. I think that's one of the more common questions we get when we're talking about, the work program is what kind of things they look for. So that would be extremely helpful. I like that idea.
I think it's great for you guys to see that too, because we often question, why do so many customers come back after the initial power orientation and request that they withdraw? And I guess from the DWS side, as your partner, we just want to assure you that we're not being mean to customers, we're not poking them in the eye or anything like that. It's just a very intense assessment. And a lot of folks just aren't ready to address some of those concerns and issues at that time. And so, they make a personal decision that, this program isn't for them right now. But again, that assessment is really crucial in identifying those employment barriers so that we can get to the heart of what's really going on with the individual.
Great. I think that's a really good idea too. Is if we can help prepare them for that a little bit, maybe it won't be such sticker shock when they show up to your office and go through that assessment. So that's good. Okay. So I'm just going to give everybody just a few minutes to see if there's any additional questions that you might have regarding Georgia's presentation, or anything that she might be able to answer for us regarding their role at Workforce Services. This is the part where we always enjoy the 30-second delay, because we've got to give everybody at least 30 seconds to see if we can get some answers, or some questions, I should say.
Well, while we're waiting, Kelly, I'd just like to say that, in this past year, we've been really successful, I think, in job shadowing each other on both sides, so that DWS case managers can see what DFS workers do, and DFS workers can see what the DWS case managers do, and that's a really great practice. I think it helps us both understand our responsibilities in this partnership and how we can better serve those customers, and also, as a professional courtesy, allows us to see how we can help each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing too. So if that's not something that you have taken advantage of in your office, I'd certainly encourage everybody to make sure that they have take some time to do that. Maybe speak to your supervisor about times when you might be able to go and do some job shadowing at Workforce Services, because we do want to create that partnership. So that's a great addition as well, Georgia. Okay, so I'm not seeing any additional questions. So I would like to thank you for being here, Georgia, and I do know that what will happen is we'll have a few additional questions after it's done. So I may send you an email if we have any other questions come up, and then we can send that out if that works for you, or do a follow-up.
Sure, that sounds great. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, well, thanks for being here with us, and you're welcome to leave the call if you want, or stick around for the next half an hour as we go through some of the other training things we have on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next on the agenda I have Brandi that's joined us from the Gillette office, and she was able to attend the New Paths conference. And again, these folks that attended the conference, I don't know if they realized they were signing up for this part of it, of being able to present to everybody. So really want to thank them for being here as well. So Brandi, can you hear us? Are you on the call okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, so I will turn the time over to you, and just you'll be presenting to everybody, so take it from there.
Well, good morning, everybody. I had the opportunity in August to go to San Antonio, Texas, to the National New Paths Conference, and while there I decided to attend a conference called Welfare Reform, How Other States Do It, and there was a presenter from West Virginia and Indiana. More so through what I talk about today will be through the presentation I watched from Josh Woodward, who was from West Virginia, because I found what they do for the POWER program pretty interesting. So just to start out, Josh talked about how in West Virginia there is actually 357,190 individuals participating in their SNAP program in their state, and I found it interesting as the population here in Wyoming is just only a little over 500,000. He stated that for their West Virginia Works program, which is their our POWER program, they have a little over 7,000 individuals that participate in that program. I was intrigued at the high number of their participants, as the fact that here in Wyoming we are continuing to try to increase our number of POWER participants that they have there. What they do in their state is they actually have caseworkers that are just designated solely to their West Virginia Works program. So they don't do Medicaid, they don't do food stamps, they don't do any other eligibility, they just simply do West Virginia Works. And they are called family support specialists. They actually they do like home studies with these people, like actually visit their homes to see what their situations are. Because sometimes I feel that that's a barrier to people. We're not sure what their transportation's like, maybe what their home life's like. So I found that pretty interesting. The other thing that they do there is if the client expresses the interest in the West Virginia Works program, so once they apply, the worker actually has 10 days to accept the application, do the client's orientation, and create a self-sufficiency program. So there's not quite the deadline like if somebody comes in Wednesday at 4:45 to rush and get those people into a program. They have a full 10 days to be able to do that. They also have additional programs such as emergency assistance. If the client can prove that they are in emergency needs, such as items like gas certificates, electrical help, housing, and medication, they can create vouchers right there in the office for their clients to be able to go and get that. Another program that I found interesting that they do have in West Virginia is one that maybe for more so like caretaker relatives who don't want to initially be on POWER, but they need a little help like at school time. So there's vouchers for these people to go out and purchase clothing and school supplies for kiddos at that time of the year, and that's the only program they're on. So they're not on POWER, they're not on their West Virginia Works program or a caretaker relative program. It's just a voucher at that time of the year to be able to use. They also have LEAP in their state as well. So I thought that for that program is pretty interesting. It'd be interesting to see here in Wyoming if maybe we just had caseworkers specific to POWER to see if that was something where we could increase our numbers, because I feel like if you deal with them from point A to point Z, that there may be nothing that we missed there. I think sometimes when we transfer from our office over to Department of Workforce Services that things get missed, and I think we lose clients along the way at that point. Then I did listen to a presentation from a lady in the state of Indiana, and they actually do a contractor. They use Xerox to run their programs for them. So they don't actually have state employees. They have employees that are contracted through Xerox. And the goal of this was to consolidate on a single system for their disability, Medicaid, food stamps, TANF, and all other programs. So it's a call center. not like what we do here in Wyoming, which I think that it's still great that here in Wyoming we're able to provide the proper customer service and be able to see our clients face to face or over a phone interview, but it's more personal and you have a set caseworker. If any of you have the opportunity to go to a New Paths conference, I highly recommend it. Not only did I make great friends across the state, so I have resources in Cheyenne and Pinedale and Geri and Lusk and all kinds of things like that. I just think it's a great way for everybody to come together and to kind of see how things do in other states. I met a gentleman from the state of New York who you might find funny that he thinks we have accents in Wyoming. But you know, I met people from Texas and New York and Florida, and I have email addresses for those people, and I think it's a great resource for us to be able to email them and maybe see how they deal with an issue that we might be dealing with here in our state. I don't really have anything else unless anybody has any questions.
All right, so we'll give some people some time to kind of bring those questions in. But I think that's great, and I think the plug for New Paths is absolutely great. Anytime we can make some of those contacts outside of the state and kind of get a different perspective, it certainly helps. Obviously, not everything that works in a state like West Virginia or anywhere else is going to work perfectly here, and that's why we have some differentiation in between our programs, which is great as well. So being able to kind of share those ideas is good. So one of the things I was going to ask you about, you mentioned kind of that voucher program. So is that voucher program a statewide program, or are those community-based programs?
It is a statewide program. I believe they use the TANF grant to be able to provide that service to their clients.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I do know that one of the things that I think we should definitely encourage too is a lot of times, especially here in Wyoming, we might not have some of those statewide programs, but you guys know some of those community resources where people might be able to get some of that immediate help, because we all know that sometimes even 7 days waiting for SNAP benefits can be a long wait. And as we approach kind of the Thanksgiving season and the Christmas season, a really good idea to just maybe make some contacts with your local food banks. We're trying to make sure that there are, you know, some extra TFAP goods available at some of those as well. So if you can make those contacts and help kind of have those resources, even though we don't have a voucher program, which is a great idea, that's one thing that you can do to kind of assist with people. Okay, well, Brandi, I don't see any questions coming in for you, but I'd like to thank you again for just taking the opportunity to present what you picked up.
Yeah, thanks for letting me present.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity. I really like it. All right, so next on our agenda is Geri Zeimans. So let me make sure that she is here and available. So I'll turn the time over to you, Geri. You are muted right now, so you just need to unmute your microphone, and hopefully we'll be able to hear you.
Okay.
Yep,
that
we
right?
can hear you. Yep, we can hear you now.
I was going to say, lights on, nobody's home, right?
Well, I wasn't going to go that far, just the muted. I'm just going to stick with that much.
Nice job, Brandi. That was really interesting. You know, one thing about New Paths is the camaraderie, you know, that we had, and I learned so much from our Wyoming delegation, and the fact that I was so proud of them. They you know, they interacted, they learned so much, and you know, they were just so excited that you know, made me excited too. You know, I hadn't been to a conference for some time, and so I kind of was back in the groove, and it was just really exciting. Also, I wanted to thank Roxanne and Jackie for giving us the opportunity to be able to attend this conference. It was absolutely wonderful. You know, one thing that I noticed in the conference itself, that I think we are coming more universally into a case management situation where we become a holistic approach to that individual. You know, excuse me, geez. You know, we've always talked about, you know, the always having a hand up instead of a hand out, and I think that conference was kind of centered around that. And so some of the breakouts, like what Brandi attended and the previous ones that had spoken, is all around that. The one that I attended was called PBR, and it was People, Behavior, and Reaction. And it was from a couple people from Alaska. And the presenters are from all over the United States. They're not just from New Pass. Actually, some of them are New Pass members, and some of them are people that come in and have you know, a certain expertise. Based on that workshop, you know, the public can be very difficult, but we have to look at their needy situations from their perspective. And as caseworkers, we need to do some soul searching on why we work for social services. Is it to help the people, or is it just to pay our own bills? We all need to have a passion, but not so much that it takes our lives. You know, you need to have that center and that control of, you know, leaving. Of course, it's easier said than done. Basically, leaving work at work and leaving home at home. You know, we always need to do the right thing and realize that everybody has issues. We need to quit taking issues and problems personal and let it go. We need to use additional outlets to learn and to let stress go. And, you know, we've had several trainings on even our own through DFS on stress release and to take advantage of those. And also, you know, of course, part of our PMIs, you know, in that professional development is to add some of those specifics. For example, nobody likes anybody to lie to them, and you know, we always have issues with that. And you know, sometimes people don't understand that that's the only way that they know to get their needs addressed, and so they'll do whatever means that they can to obtain what they need to survive. And so we need to pull that out of them, basically what they need to satisfy their needs, and somehow point them to the positive aspect of telling us the truth. You know, I think in so many instances, and I think people that have worked in our field for some time, you have the feeling that you know when somebody is lying. And but I think for us to get around that, we need to pull that out and just say things like, you know, what can I do to help you? Or if you tell me this situation, then you can perhaps get more benefits. Or if you have that situation, we had a situation in Douglas not too long ago that the lady was living with somebody, and had she told us that information, that individual could have received SNAP benefits, but consequently we didn't know that, and so that other individual who had no income did not receive any benefits. They did talk also about staff needs as a supervisor, and actually as a peer, you know, to be respectful and professional, to smile and to laugh and to, you know, and to give praise, you know, and criticize with kindness. You know, maybe bring up your own mistakes. You know, you can certainly laugh about some of the crazy things that you've done in your past, and I know I have done plenty, and so needless to say, you can get a laugh out of that most often. But you need to be consistent all the way around. You know, consistent to the people that you supervise, consistent to the people that are your own peers on how you treat them. With that, though, you need to maintain your own emotional balance and take care of yourself. So, You know, sometimes you just need a break, you know, just to get away. In our work, we do have situations that accelerate to the point of some kind of a physical contact. Maybe somebody, you know, will grab your arm, certainly unwelcomed, or, you know, get in your face. That becomes a threat to you. And there's certain techniques that they showed at this workshop on how to avoid those. It's really important to take care of anything that is not physical back to the client before, you know, to make sure all your options are exhausted. Okay, so for example, you know, if a client grabs your arm, then you need to, you know, release that arm to get them off from you. If the client pushes you, you know, you need to, you know, walk away from that situation. You know, it doesn't do any good for you to get physical back. They did show us some specific moves on how to, say somebody grabs your wrist or your arm, and how to twist out of that if you feel that you're being threatened, you know, that way. You know, we never want to think that any of us are not going to be safe in our jobs, but it does happen, and it has happened in the past, and we just need to be really careful. One thing that they said is never fight force with force, and always be professional. Even if you have somebody that's belligerent, perhaps inebriated, there are reasons most often of why they're like that. You know, they're frustrated with the system. I know lately I have been pretty frustrated with this computer system. And I was trying to get on some programs today, and I thought seriously about taking a hammer to my computer. And so I know we all get frustrated, but we need to step back and look at the situation and know that this too will pass. We need to remember that people come to us for all sorts of needs and expect us to meet their needs in whatever manner. And we need to learn how to deal with the people's requests, behaviors, and reactions. And then our own reactions is up to us. We have that ability, and we have that professionalism, and that's why we are taught from day one on how to react to people's reactions. You know, one thing that they talked about in the workshop was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and of course everybody knows that about self-actualization and your psychological needs and safety needs and that sort of thing. And everybody has those needs, and everybody has a right to those needs. And everybody judges, and everybody wants to be recognized. But even though everybody judges, not everybody gets the recognition. And we need to be more proactive on giving individuals recognition for the work that they're doing. That's really, really important. Even though, and I don't care if it's a client or a peer or a subordinate or another supervisor or manager or whatever, you know, it just takes a few seconds to say, you know, thank you, I appreciate you. I think that just goes a long, long ways. One thing that we just started in our office to do is we're in a building with DWS and revenue, and let's see, we have adult probation, and of course vocational rehabilitation's with us too. And we have a building, we set up a fun office building committee, which is headed by one of the benefit specialists here, Corey. And so she has regular meetings, and then they meet, you know, to have fun and to socialize and to do those kind of things. And with that, there's some recognition there. Let's see. I guess one of the things that you know, we don't mean to be, but in the process that you know, in working, and everybody has a good day and everybody has a bad day, and we can all come across perhaps being maybe a little short or rude or whatever, and so then, you know, you get complaints, you know, about that happening. And one thing that they suggested is contacting the client directly and saying, you know, please tell me where you feel that I am being disrespected or disrespectful, and then perhaps I have been in interviews. I'll just tell you, I have been in interviews where it started bad. You know, for some other reason, you know, I was maybe having a bad day and I said something I probably shouldn't have said, and it put the client automatically on the defense. And so I have basically stopped the interview and I'm just saying, you know what, I think we've gotten off the wrong foot. I apologize. I'm sorry. I think I've been rude. You know, let's start over. And or the other side of the desk where the client has been really snippy and rude to me, and I have said that to them basically, you know, okay, you know, let's start over. I think we got on the wrong foot. You know, let's try something different. And this particular workshop had stated that too, is that you know what, it's okay. It's okay. You know, we all have bad days. You know, we can be wrong. You know, not all the time, but we can be wrong. And so to admit that and go on. And so anyway, just to kind of sum it up a little bit, this was a wonderful workshop. I learned a lot. It kind of reaffirmed some of the things that I've been doing, and it made me think about some of the things that I've been doing that need to be fixed. And so anyway, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for letting me ramble.
Geri, that's awesome. We really appreciate it. I think now that maybe you can do a self-defense seminar for us too, right?
Well, I've attended a few, but I don't know. I'm probably not very good at it. We need to get somebody in there to do that, though. I think that would be good.
That's good. I really appreciate it, and thanks for all you do with that and with New Paths as well. One of the things Jenny reminded us too about the New Paths $100 chance to win by guessing the due date, or I guess the birth date of Roxanne's upcoming baby. So remember, if you have questions on that, you can contact Jenny as well. So, all right.
Just something else is that we're going to be having a training. I think it's in March, Brandi, isn't that right? That is to be announced soon. And we try to have a training in the spring and the fall for New Paths, and then we'll be doing some fundraising too to see other people. The conference is going to be in Richmond, Virginia, and I think that would be a really exciting place to go. And so yeah, we're hoping that we'll have quite a few people, and that's where our fundraising, the majority of our fundraising goes, is to support the people that go to help them go to conference.
Perfect. So if anybody has any other questions on New Paths or anything like that, can they still contact you, Geri?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Just send me an email.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Geri, and thanks for not only attending but then taking the time to present to us today.
Sure.
Okay, so if you have any other questions for any of our presenters, just please, you know, go ahead and type that in. We're going to finish off with just a couple of things that I wanted to cover for training as well. So one of the things that you may have noticed is there has been some changes to the narrative, and if you've been in any of my trainings or been to any of the classes that we've offered, you'll know that I am keen on the narrative. I think it's a very important tool, and we should all feel that way. But I do know that sometimes it gets a little bit frustrating when that constantly changes. So I wanted to take just a few minutes and go over some of the changes and maybe even some of the reasons why we've changed that narrative. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys what what the new narrative looks like. Hopefully this is all things that you have seen before. Most of it is going to be very similar, but just wanted to kind of point out maybe a few of the things that have changed and maybe a few of the things that you might have missed. One of the things that you'll notice that has changed right away is the revamped section on interfaces. So if you'll notice, what the narrative is now asking you to do, and it is a little bit extra work, is to not only mark the date that you checked all the interfaces and check those boxes, but also to be able to include just a little bit more information on what you might have found on each interface, and a reminder that these interfaces need to be checked for each person and what date those were checked as well. So one of the things that we have seen as one of the trends as we evaluate kind of our own quality assurance practices, and even looking back at maybe some of the errors that popped up around, some of those can be prevented by checking interfaces and making sure we do that correctly. So if you'll notice, the way that we're hoping to help everybody, just kind of as a gentle reminder to make sure that those are checked each time, is to kind of put that in there. So please kind of fill out this section as well. Make sure you're using the most up-to-date narrative. One of the things that you may not have noticed, but is also helpful, is if you go into each one of these check boxes, and I know it's maybe hard to read on your screen, but if you open up the narrative, you should be able to see this. If Word works on your computer, sorry, that's under my breath a little bit. But if you open up the narrative, when you scroll over each one of those check boxes, down in the bottom in blue, many times there's going to be a little additional help on what information you might need. So for example, I've scrolled over the RIS interface box, and down in the lower left-hand side, it tells me that information that can be included in this interface can be found in the combined manual from sections 800 to 807 and in 1000, and a reminder that for SNAP all motor vehicles are exempt, but that for power, vehicles still count, and that we can look in section 806 to remind that. I do know there's one question that came up that there may be an even newer version than this. This is the most recent one that has been updated onto the combined manual website, and I know that there's been a couple additional changes since then. So you will see maybe a couple of additional changes that popped on there. So Mary, very good question, and I'm glad we got a chance to address that. Everything else should remain the same, but even with that, remember that if you go through, you might be able to find additional information down in the lower left-hand side just by scrolling over that. And we do want to make sure that this narrative is filled out completely every single time. One other note that you might see is that the narrative now has a date attached to it. So when you download the narrative, you'll be able to see what date that narrative was created on, and that date is actually going to be updated every single month. Okay, and the reason for that is to just make sure that we're always using the most up-to-date narrative, and that each time that we create a new narrative, we're also going to make sure that we're using a brand new, fresh narrative as well. Just because sometimes as we go through, if we leave boxes checked or spaces of a narrative filled out, then we miss it when we go through a little bit too quickly. So that's just kind of one of those things to just kind of help make sure that we take the time to have a good narrative, because really the narrative is our lifeline for anybody else who may look at that case, or even for ourselves if we look at that case again in 6 months or maybe even 24 months later. Okay. A couple other just kind of notes that we wanted to make sure everybody is aware of is to make sure that narratives are filled out completely. I do know that there has been a trend that sometimes the final action section has not been filled out. And I know this may come from some people feeling like they have to retype an entire narrative. in order to fill out that final action section and make sure it's in there. So we do want to make sure that we're following good procedure. So whenever you create a narrative, make sure that you're saving that narrative. Hopefully maybe your office even has a folder set up for narratives on a shared drive, so that if you are out for any period of time and somebody needs access to that narrative to finish it off, they can do that. So that narrative should be saved up until the next recertification period for your client. So when we want to make sure that we use a fresh new narrative each recertification period, but once we create that narrative, if there are additional actions that are taken or we make final action on a case, that way we can go back up in, open that back up, add the additional information that we need, and then make sure you print out that final version, and that's the one that you're going to want to include in your case file. Okay, so if you have any other additional questions, please let us know on the narrative. I do know that Danita's not here right now, but if you have any other suggestions that you think should be included in that, again, this is something that we want to make sure that is updated and has the most up-to-date information. So I do also know, and I know Lori just asked the question, is that right now we have some word issues with Citrix and we're not able to download the new version of the narrative. What I would say to you is hopefully that stuff gets straightened out, and we don't need to take a self-defense class from Geri and then destroy our computer with that knowledge, that instead we can get that stuff figured out and be able to work with that in a Word document. Also, Holly asked the question, will we have to download the narrative form each month? And that is absolutely correct. So I do know that we talked about last month how to set that up so that you have a link directly to that narrative on your homepage. I will admit that now with the new changes to Citrix, I'm not sure if that method will still work, but the new narrative will also be uploaded automatically to your templates folder and be updated on the Combined Manual website. So hopefully we'll be able to find that new narrative every time. So we just want to make sure that we're making a good effort to do that. I know within the next week or so we'll be hopefully getting some of those Citrix issues straightened out that we've had yesterday and this morning. And then Amy asked the question, is there a section for the address or double checking the mailing address? I don't necessarily think that we have a section for that address right now, and hopefully that's something that we're remembering to check because it's already in Epics, but that may be something that if we see a trend or if you feel like that's something that needs to be added, that can certainly be a change that we can suggest and then send on to Danita Martinez and see if there's something that we can go through with that. And then Teresa also mentioned that there's an email this morning with directions how to download things in Word. I did like that first original message came in the form of a Word document, and then they send it out again in a PDF format. So if you're having trouble downloading some of these things, any email attachments, things like that, hopefully that will help. But again, hopefully we can get that taken care of. All right, so again, make sure that you do a good narrative. I won't stop talking about narratives because I just feel like it's so important to us, and we want to continue to stress the importance of using that narrative. Just as a recap, make sure that you're using the most up-to-date narrative, that it's filled out completely and correctly, and that you're saving it somewhere in a shared folder so that people can access that, or you can go back in and finish that up until the next recertification period. Once that your client does their recertification, you can delete that old narrative out because it should be printed off and stored in their file and start a new one. Okay, the next thing that I just wanted to go over as well is one of the additional tools that we're going to be releasing to you very shortly. So hopefully you should see this, I would say, in the next, the later part of this week. There are just a couple of things that needed to be finalized on this, and this is the Notices Toolkit. So The Notices Toolkit is something that we feel like can really help avoid some of the question marks that come up on which notice I should send or what situations a notice might be appropriate for. So you'll notice this Notices Toolkit is arranged with not only general suggestions, but also we'll talk specifically about each notice. So I will let you guys take the time to go over this once it's released and go into it. But just notice there's a few additional helps on here. So if you open this Notices Toolkit, and this is something that you could print out and have next to your desk, but I also encourage you to keep the electronic version handy, because if you have a question on a notice or what information needs to be sent, and you wanted to go back in, all of these blue links that you'll see once you get this are also links back to the combined manual. So for example, if you had a question on a client's rights or responsibilities, you could click right here in the blue section when it says CM 402, and it would take you to the combined manual section 402, and you could look at that information. So hopefully it's just another tool that you can use to help you out. If you scroll through it, it will talk about some of your processing times and your deadlines as well. Talk about some of the language that you can use in a notice. Also, some of the content issues. And I know these are all things that we've discussed, but this just kind of puts everything into a one place where you can find that information. Okay, so then you're going to find that this is going to be divided up into the different notices that you can send out. Pen notices for applications. It will address each separate notice that you can send out. Some of those notices will have examples in blue, or maybe additional things to watch out for in red. So keep an eye out for that. Once you get it in your office, I'd encourage you guys to go through it. Find things that you think will be helpful, and then keep that handy so that when you need to send that notice out that you're not quite sure if the notice number that you want to send out fits the circumstance of your client, you can go back in and look at this notice toolkit. So I'd like to thank Andrea Stark for all her hard work in putting this together. She's taken all of this information, she's made it all available to us, she's taken the time to go through each individual notice. And there has been some changes in what notices are available based on the information that we put in here. So many of you have offered great suggestions along the way as well, and so I'd like to thank all of you for putting that together. Okay. Then the last thing that I wanted to tell you about is just a couple of things that are upcoming. So one of the things that you'll also see released in the next week or two is going to be an example of a power interview. So that's going to be in a YouTube video format. So what I'd like to do is release this to everybody and just let you guys take that and run with it. I would really encourage supervisors to take the time to watch the video, and maybe even to have a follow-up meeting where you might sit down and talk to your staff about best practices that they might use, or things that they see in that power interview that they may have missed. But we just wanted to make sure that there was a really solid example out there about things that might change in a power interview that you might not be doing every time in a SNAP interview. We all get to the point where we're very comfortable doing those SNAP interviews just because we have so many more SNAP clients, but sometimes we add power into the mix and it throws us for a little bit of a loop. So we wanted to make sure there's an example out there. So I'd like to thank Elaine Brown and Dan Barella down in the Cheyenne office. They did an awesome job, so hopefully you will enjoy that when that's released as well. Okay, and then as a final note, the one more change that we have coming up is the date of our next video conference. So originally the date of that video conference I think was for December 27th, right after Christmas, that week where a lot of people like to take time off and nobody really wants to think too much about training issues. So we're going to move that conference up just a little bit, and you'll notice it's already been deleted off of your calendar. So we're actually going to have that video conference on December 10th at 9 o'clock. So instead of a Tuesday, that's going to be a Thursday. And we'll have some training available. It'll also be a time where Roxanne O'Connor will be able to be in attendance for that. She's fairly confident that her baby is going to be born on a specific date. Now, I've told her that sometimes those babies can have a mind of their own, but we'll see. But we will plan for that December 10th date, and that will appear on your calendars as well. We will do the same video format that we did today. Okay, so just a couple of things, final questions that come up. Susie asked what date the new narrative will be available each month, and to be honest with you, I can't tell you exactly what date that will be. That might be some information that we can get. I know that Annette Jones in the state office is going to be the one that makes sure that's updated, and most of the time that narrative is not going to change. It's going to be the exact same narrative, only simply that date's going to have the new month on it. So that should happen at the beginning of each month. I'm just not exactly sure if that's going to be the first or the first business day. However that works out, that way we just know whatever the newest narrative is going to be. Okay, and then Paul also asked about time analysis, and this is a question that I get all the time. So for these video conferences, typically you can take that time and really just look in your drop-down menus. If you're the lucky winner of the time analysis in your office, you can look in the drop-down menu, and most of the time these video conferences can simply be divided between SNAP training and power training, because we try to do both. If there is something SNAP specific, you can code the time directly to SNAP. If there's something power specific, you can do that. If there's anything additional, I will make sure to send out an email as a follow-up. But if you don't hear an email as a follow-up, you can usually simply divide the hour or the hour and 15 minutes into divide it up between SNAP and power, and you should be good that way. All right, with that, I think we'll finish up for the morning. I'd like to thank you all for the time that you spent. I'd also like to thank all of our presenters. So I'd like to thank Brandi and Geri for presenting on the New Pass conference that they were able to attend, and also for Georgia for helping us out from Workforce Services. You know, that partnership has continued to grow and develop, and we'd like to thank them. So that's all I have for you this morning. I'd like to thank you again for your attendance, and if somebody was unable to attend this morning or view this live, this will be placed up on YouTube. You can go back and view it at any time. Thank you, and have a great day.